Hello, everyone. My name is Chloe. I am from Tascop Global Consulting, and we are welcoming you today to the session titled Working Together, Building an Interconnected Alliance to Advance Inherited Blood Disorders. We are very, very excited today because we have a panel of very esteemed speakers. And before I get into my introductions, I wanted to just cover very briefly the housekeeping rules. So there are two means for you to interact in the session. And we do hope for it to be an interactive session. As a attendee member, you can ask questions using the chat function or the question and answer. As well as that, there is a option for you to do translations or closed captioning at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to select the language that you would like your closed captionings to be. We also remind folks to be respectful of the speakers and keep yourself muted as the session is proceeding, as well as that the session is recorded and the recordings will be published for everyone to review after the Congress is finished. So getting into it, I would also like to say that I am joined as a co-moderator, where my other co-moderator is Mrs. Lanri Tunji Ajayi, who is the CEO of GANSID. Now I have the pleasure to introduce the panelists that we have today. Now, all of these speakers have extensive accolades, and in the interest of time, I could not read all of their accolades. We do encourage you as a light reading assessment to go onto our website and check out all the excellent things that they are doing aside from obviously participating in this Congress. First up, I would like to introduce Dr. Victoria Odashina, co-founder of the Global Sickle Cell Alliance. She has over 40 years of nursing and public health experience and is a passionate advocate for sickle cell disease. Dr. Odashina has established newborn screening programs across multiple Nigerian states and leads a hemoglobinopathy educator training. She is also a published author and an international speaker for sickle cell disease. We also have Riyad Albard, who may be a couple minutes late, but he has over 25 years of experience advocating for thalassemia and hemoglobinopathies care. He serves as the treasurer on the board of Thalassemia International Federation and is a board member of the Canadian Organization for Rare Disorders, as well as for GANSID. We also have Dr. Doreen Wong-Rieger. She is a global leader and advocate for rare diseases, holding many prestigious positions in several organizations, such as being the chair of Rare Diseases International. She holds a PhD in psychology and is the author of several books and publications and is also a certified health coach. We also have Ms. Angela Bilku, who's joining us from Roche. She joined this company that's located in Canada in 2018, focusing on federal policy strategies in rare diseases, oncology, and neurosciences before later transitioning to a global role supporting patient-centric research in solid tumors. She also enjoys traveling with her family and taking cooking classes to bring flavors from around the world into her home. We also have Dr. Rabina Simpson from the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, or CHEO. She is also she is a pediatric hematologist oncologist at CHEO, as well as an associate professor at the University of Ottawa. She specializes in improving health systems for children with sickle cell disease and other hemoglobinopathies. Previously, Assistant Dean for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, she recently became the division head of hematology oncology at CHEO in 2024, focusing on advancing care and advocacy for pediatric oncology. Next, we have Dr. Gaurav Karia. He's the clinical lead for bone marrow transplant and cellular therapy at Apollo Hospital in Delhi, India, and specializes in pediatric hematology, oncology, and immunology with a focus on hematopoietic stem cell transplants, especially for sickle cell disease. Actively involved in research on cell and gene therapies, he has led nearly 1,000 transplants and collaborates with NGOs to provide patients support financially, as well as ensuring equitable access to treatment. Last but not least, we also have Janie Young Davis, Director of Global Patient Advocacy at Agios Pharmaceuticals. And she brings over 25 years of experience in rare disease advocacy, brand strategy, and product launches. With a personal connection to sickle cell, she is dedicated to empowering patient communities and has worked closely with the sickle cell community at Agios to understand as well as address their unique challenges. So, with all of that in mind, I would like to now pass over the control to Ms. Lanri Tunji to get the question started. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chloe. And thank you again, our excellent experts, for joining today's session. We have a few questions we have prepared for you to help us facilitate this interactive discussion this afternoon. We know that our attendees, the guests, are really they're really looking forward to learn from you how we as a community could build an interconnected, alliance to advance inherited blood disorders. I'm going to start with Duran Wangriga, and based on your insights and all the great work you've done in rare diseases, we would like to hear from you how you think the inherited blood disorders community could really push forward to advance its cause as a global collective. Thank you, Duran.
Well, thank you. I wasn't expecting to kick this off, but I will be happy to do so. And just speaking more from my own experience, as you say, I was involved with hemophilia from the beginning of the 90s or late 80s. And certainly from that, we know that the World Federation of Hemophilia is one of the most powerful advocacy groups, but also a very great community in terms of bringing people from around the globe together. I've also been a member of and worked with TIFF, thalassemia for a very long time, also having a daughter with thalassemia. I would say that the thing that those two have in common, of course, is choosing common missions, common questions, not just a mission, but really focusing on what is it we're trying to do. With hemophilia in the beginning, it was trying to get access to safe blood products and sort of the new, clotting factors. And how do you work together? How do you make sure that they're available across the globe? Not necessarily the same factors for everybody all the time, recognizing difference in terms of countries, but really focusing on the importance of making sure everybody can get access to the best possible within their environment and also sharing it. I mean, thalassemia, as you know, TIFF has been a really strong advocate as well in terms of a lot of it around education and common educational platforms. And more recently, of course, coming together as well around the advanced products and gene therapies, and have been one of the leading voices speaking for gene therapies, not just for thalassemia, but for the other, bleeding disorders. And you know that, as you said, I was one of the founding members of Rare Diseases International. And our mission in coming together at that point, we had a strong focus. How can we get a UN declaration for rare diseases? And that would require everybody in the rare disease community to come together. How do we get rare diseases identified in the UN resolution on universal health coverage, which we're doing? And now we're working towards a WHO resolution on rare diseases. So for us, for me, I think the thing is, what do you want to do together? What is the overriding interest that you all have in common? And, I always talk about superordinate goals. If you come together just to come together, you end up kind of, yes, we're there and it's really important. But the more you can latch on to one or two superordinate goals that you can only achieve if you work together, I think that's what makes an alliance successful. And it keeps it from actually splintering because there are always, as you know, internal jockeyings. As long as you're all focused on a common goal and you know that you got to stick together in terms of getting to that goal. I think I'm looking at Riyadh and, you as well, in Canada. Our goal has been trying to get a rare disease strategy in Canada. And it means that we've all had to work together. So choose something, work together, go for it together. And then hopefully as you achieve one, you get to do more together.
That is excellent. Thank you so much, Duran, for providing that insight. And I'm going to pass it to Riyadh. As a patient, someone with lived thalassemia experience, and someone who is also on the board of GANSAID, what would you think, and how do you think we could actually advance a global collective in inherited blood disorders? Rhea.
Thank you, Landry. Actually, Durhan put us right on tracks as usual from the beginning. We had a good start of this discussion. Um, I want to go back to the beginning when I first started my volunteer work. I always been a sort of a person who builds collaborations and networks, and I think there's a lot that can be done through collaboration, and that would help. When I started with the Thalassemia Foundation, they were a well-established organization, but I felt you need to build these connections to leverage more of the um, effort and more of the work that you can do together, and you can learn from other organizations. So that is true at the regional level in the one country, and it's also true at the international level, where you can collaborate together on establishing or achieving goals that you want to achieve, whether if it's in your country or in your region or even globally. These inherited blood disorders, they all have many common things. I know we talked about how we share doctors, resources, hospitals, clinics, but also they have something that they all also, share the same struggles. For example, we've known what their treatments are, what the optimal treatment is. They all have established guidelines, but very few places that have already had achieved the access to that care. For example, if you look at any country, you'll find like one or two cities where for any specific disease have one or two places that provide excellent care and the rest don't. So it is important to build on that and ask the questions as why the others are not getting it. And if you are not finding that, then you are not really looking. You're not doing your right work. However, what brings us together more importantly is we can bring such important issues. Number one, the awareness. Why group all the cancers together and not the inherited blood disorders together? You pool resources for these diseases together. I mean, cancer has many variations, yet we don't say this cancer or that cancer. We just say cancer in general. I know there are specific one or two that we identify as more in the spotlight, but this is what we need to do with inherited blood disorders. I know Durhan has mentioned that hemophilia is well established and is a really amazing community, and thalassemia has moved on a long way. And I think the sickle cell is moving forward. But what about the one or two other diseases that have a small number of patients, such as Fanconi? And to go back on experience, I mean, many years ago, we thought working together with a sickle cell will achieve a lot for us. And we did that in Ontario. We went advocating for a clinic in Toronto, and the health authorities, or at that time, whoever was looking into finding a resolution, they tried to separate. They're like, are we here for thalassemia or sickle cell? We're like, no, we're here for transfused patients. Where, you always have to come as a stronger a group, as a larger group, and politicians or health authorities, they're good at breaking you up into many different groups. So they deal with a smaller problem and they please the least number of people, and then they get away with avoiding additional expenses. So we said we're both together. The same thing when Landry, you and I, we went to approach one of the MPs to do the advocacy here in Ontario. The question was, is this for sickle cell or thalassemia? I mean, this question comes out all the time. We said, no, both. And thanks to you, you were actually the one who emphasized it is for both. And we see that for many and many other situations. But why not group it all together? We've seen in countries like in Trinidad, where you have the Inherited Blood Disorders Organization. They group together hemophilia, thalassemia, and sickle cell. In many other countries, we see the doctors who are advocating for thalassemia, they also treat hemophilia patients, or they also treat sickle cell patients. So why, it's natural to group these people together, these patients together, and to collaborate collectively, make the stronger voice. Even if we want to, talk about research, why not have a coordinated multi-city or multi-site research that includes the patient organizations? And patient organizations can always learn from one another. A lot of us, we face the same similar problems. Yes, the diseases are different, but the problems are a lot similar. And we know that like from the rare disease community, where rare diseases all struggle for the same biggest obstacles, which is access to optimal care. The other thing I want to mention is training new doctors. Everybody gets older. Us, the patients get older, so do the doctors. And we're at a point where all these gurus or those experts on thalassemia, hemophilia, sickle cell, we need the new doctors to learn. So training and educating the new doctors, the newcomers, even other healthcare providers, that is key. So these are things where we can all do together. I'm sure I missed a lot more, but these are the ones that has come to mind now.
And I know, Riyad, you have so much passion for collectivity that I know you can go on and go on. But
Yeah.
thank you so much. And I want to, just refer to what Joram said earlier to say you got to identify what brings you together. And I'm listening to you, Riyad, speak. You talk about some of the examples like we've had when we come together, how we were able to achieve success. So I think individually, these disease areas are doing great and they're doing well. But just imagine when you then come together, how much more you can achieve. As Riyad said, many of these diseases are being treated in the same centers, especially when you look at low and medium resource countries. The same center, the same doctors are treating them. There is definitely, that opportunity for cross-disease, advocacy and other initiatives to drive home and to ensure there is improved access to care and treatment. So thank you so much, Riyad. I will move on to Dr. Odeshina, who leads Global Sickle Cell Initiative to kind of help us understand, why she is part of Genfit and why she thinks, as a collective, we can drive forward to advance this cause. Dr. Odeshina.
Thank you very much. As has been mentioned, my experience has been as a parent, a nurse researcher, and someone who has established NGO in the US and doing some work in the US and in Nigeria based on the needs that we identified as necessary for our population. And over several years, we realize, as has been mentioned, that there are gaps in services. There are so many CBOs, NGOs, different partnerships, but we still have areas that are lacking that parents and patients, families, have difficulties navigating the system and receiving the services that are needed, even with the level of advocacy that's still available. So that was what led us to establish the CBO in US, and we've partnered with academics, academic centers, academic associations. We've partnered with other NGOs to accomplish several things, including education, awareness, and putting policy in place for better services for adults or children with sickle cell disease, including mandating that there will be a hematologist who will be taking care of our children with sickle cell disease. So why is GLOSCA a member of GANSID? GLOSCA was established as a grassroots organization several years ago by individuals, world development community leaders, and partners here who identified the need for newborn screening in Nigeria. So that led us to the establishment of the Nigerian Newborn Screening Initiative. And as the previous speakers have said, this is not something you can do by yourself. It didn't just come like that, but it was an initiative of the grassroots organization, and that led us to contact other partners that we think might be helpful to us. We have a colleague who works in the newborn screening space in Connecticut for so many years, who has been following up with Revity for so many years. They used to be Perkinema, for them to invest in newborn screening in Nigeria for sickle cell. I, as a public health nurse and a researcher, has been pushing to have newborn screening programs in Nigeria because I have relatives too, apart from the fact that I'm a parent of 2 children with sickle cell. I have relatives in Nigeria that are not receiving the care, and I can see what they are going through. So with that, I came to US and partnered with APHL, Association of Public Health Laboratories. And through that, CDC was involved, and we were able to get Perkinema to donate IEF machines for us in Nigeria. So GLOSCA, then that was the birth of the Nigerian Newborn Screening Initiative in 2009. We did assessment of centers, sites, and we were able to implement newborn screening in 3 states in Nigeria. So going back to why we are a member of GANSID, the challenges that comes with growth. We experienced that, and we had issues with funding because it's a grassroots organization. We don't have that academic or industry support or the name and all those things. And the state government that we're working with also did not fulfill their promises because of the financial support. And this is the foundation of everything we're talking about, the financial support for all the programs. We can think about going to the moon, but if we don't have that financial support, it's very difficult and challenging for CBOs or NGOs to be able to accomplish their goals. So GLOSCA became a member of GANSID, but I think the foundation of what we're doing is to be able to improve the health-related quality of life of our individuals we're working with. And that will be programs that have measurable outcomes. And we need to look at it. I know there's someone who specializes in JEDI here. I'll let her speak about that. But if we look at our programs, our intent, based on measurable outcomes of health-related quality of life. And also we look at it with the lens of JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Having parents and patients at the table at the planning level, just as GANSID is doing right now, from planning to implementation to dissemination and to including awareness. I think we will go a long way. And this is part of the reason why GLOSCA decided to become a member of GANSID, so that we can work together and address build on our strengths and also address our weaknesses and work collaboratively.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adeshina. If I may just paraphrase what you said, the organization see the value in working with, the umbrella organization to also improve capacity for GLOSCA and also to co-identify gaps and work on it together. Thank you so much for all the great work you're doing. I'll pass it to my co-moderator, Chloe, to take the next set of questions. Thank you.
Hi, excellent. Thank you very much. I'm just going to quickly turn over to our clinician panelist, Dr. Simpson, for one quick question. For the healthcare providers serving people with inherited blood disorders in your region, what do you think is working well and what might not be working as well?
Okay, thank you for the question, Chloe. And so I'll speak to our Canadian context. So I practice in Canada, where we have a relatively small community of healthcare providers, as well as advocacy groups supporting children and adults with inherited blood disorders. And so because we're a small community, there are pros and cons to this. So firstly, because we tend to know each other, we've been able to come together to really bring forward strong advocacy that's mainly led and driven by our patient advocacy groups, but as well as our healthcare provider groups. And as Riyadh had mentioned, many of the providers who care for individuals with hemoglobinopathies like sickle cell disease or thalassemia are the same individuals who take care of those who are affected by hemophilia and other blood disorders. And so learning from experiences, managing different conditions in different contexts, we can learn about frameworks that have been effective to provide optimal care. But as many of our panelists have said, in Canada, for example, because there's a large geography, depending where you live, you may or may not have access to the best center or the most specialized center that cares for individuals who have a given red cell disorder. So because of this, it's been very, very important for that advocacy to really drive the standards of care so that we've been able to establish guidelines to help all of our centers to ensure that we're giving the best care at the right time for all of our patients when they come to these comprehensive centers. But at the same time, in partnership with our advocacy groups, we're also helping to establish what defines comprehensive care. So for example, for sickle cell disease, when it comes to comprehensive care, we've worked together to try to establish what the minimums are so that when it comes to providing resources for different centers in different areas, there's a standard that can be used to advocate for more resources and equitable resources, as Dr. Odeshina was just talking about, where, you know, that equity principle is so important and it shouldn't matter where you live. And that shouldn't necessarily preclude you from having access to care because you live 100 kilometers away from the comprehensive care center as opposed to 10 kilometers away, for example. So where we have strengths are that we do have expertise in delivering care for individuals with red cell disorders, but there are few of us and we are spread across the country. So we really do need to advocate for more resources in terms of human resources and expanding the knowledge and bringing it to where the care is needed, and finding better ways to distribute care more equitably, whether we're talking about disease modifying type of therapies or curative therapies. Because when we talk about things like transplant, those are not even, transplant centers are not even equitably distributed across the country when it comes to curing inherited blood disorders. Another barrier that I think we need to work together and collaborate to address is the slow pace for drug approval when it comes to the treatments of patients with blood disorders, where firstly, clinical trials, of course, take a long time because, of course, we want to ensure that these therapies are safe and effective before making them available to our patients on a public level. But then once drugs are shown to be effective, the time it takes for the approval and then the time it takes for the agreements to come for our different health insurance across the country by province to actually cover the care is very lengthy, and that those cause delays that can mean the difference between life or death for some patients. So that's really something that I think as healthcare providers and advocacy groups, but also with our pharmaceutical industry partners, we can work with government to try to advocate to improve the pace at which new drugs become available. One thing that I wanted to also mention is that in Canada, one thing that we've learned, I guess, because of our geography, is that knowing that every province has its own way of funding care and providing care, we've been able to learn from each other to provide the best possible care given our context. And I think that GANSID has parallels to that, in that by bringing different conditions together, different providers together from different jurisdictions, there's opportunity to exchange knowledge and best practices and really try to learn from each other to try to find ways to enable the best possible care within our contexts. And so hopefully with fora like these and others, we'll be able to really come together as partners and try to advocate for more equitable care, not only within our regions, but across regions as well.
Thank you very much for a very comprehensive insight. I think I heard that you really emphasize the importance of equitable access to care, meeting families where they're at, and the importance of human resources as well as collaboration, and also that one piece about being mindful of the pace of drug approval. This, I think, is a great segue to ask our industry panelists, and I think I'll start with Angela and then we'll go to Janie. First, Angela, what do you think the industry is doing to support the building of interconnected alliance for inherited blood disorder communities?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. Just to share that to finish up my profile, I actually do work in sickle cell disease, and I'm the primary relationship manager for the sickle cell disease patient community. And that's kind of where I'm going to jump off at. At least the way Roche works, we work at a disease area and we help to support the patient community at a disease area. And I think working with organizations like GANSID really helps to elevate the discussion to a more of a TA level, which then allows us to identify synergies and common challenges that the patient communities are facing, which then allows us to work more collaboratively to create solutions that have broader impact from a patient community perspective. And so that, I think, the one thing is working with organizations like GANSID is helping to drive that interconnectedness. But then also taking the insights that we're hearing from the patient community, bringing it back in within our organizations, and really thinking about how best to partner with the patient community, how best to take what we've heard from the patient community and embed it in the work that we're doing to support better trials, better participant experience on trials, but also the data that we are generating in our trials have meaning to the patient community as well. So from a clinical trial perspective, it's really shaping the trials with that patient voice. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, one of the things that we are really thinking about is, those subpopulations that are underserved and how best to ensure that we're driving equitable access to our clinical trials, and making sure that we're adding resources and supporting patients, all patients, supporting patients, all patients actually, to have access to trials and meeting them where they're at, providing them what they need in order to drive equitable access. And I see GANSID doing a lot of this work, and I think it's been a really interesting conversation, and an interesting way of working. The one thing I do appreciate about GANSID is the fact that there's this focus of bringing all the stakeholders together. It's not just working with industry. It's not just working with the patient community. It's not just working with HCPs. It's being in a room, working together to solve the issue collectively together. And I think that's another way that we can actually support that interconnectedness and alliance across the community, because it's beyond the patient community. It's the community as a whole when we think about it from a health ecosystem perspective.
Thank you very much, Angela, for your insightful response. And now I'd like to turn it to Janie for any additional thoughts about how AGIOS is also doing the same.
Yes, first, thank you. I'm so glad to be here today and to hear the discussion that's happening. For AGIOS, nearly 4 years ago, we made the decision to solely focus on working on the development and commercialization within rare diseases by selling off our commercial, clinical, and research stage oncology portfolio to Xavier. So at the time, it was a bold decision, but it was a necessary one. It allowed us to focus to ensure that we could have a big impact on patients' lives. And the strategic shift gave us an ability to focus on resources and attention on the rapidly advancing rare disease portfolio. And this was important. And we were able to then look at the significant patient needs that we saw. And since we've made that shift, the company has been successful, particularly as we think about ultra rare spaces with the approval of Pyrukynd for pyruvate kinase deficiency, as well as the potential to bring all that same medication, Metapivat, to patients living with thalassemia and sickle cell within the next 2 years is our goal, potentially. So the success has been a direct result of the partnership that we've made with the patient community. And it's in our DNA as we work to keep patients centered and building connections across rare disease entire ecosystem. And we focus on allyship, particularly when we're first and always patient allies. And based upon the feedback that we've gotten from community has really been about modeling 3 behaviors across our organization. Number 1, we listen actively and openly. Number 2, collaboration and communication. And number 3 is how do we build and maintain trust and continue to do that in all that we do? And through all of this, we honor the individuality. I've heard much discussion about that this morning. As you look across the different disease states, there are similarities, but there are definitely individualities. And with living with a rare disease and having a different journey. So the patient-centric approach has enhanced our community engagement overall and helping us build inroads to the communities that we serve very quickly, and allowed us to design clinical trials that better reflect the needs and concerns of the patient population, as well as improving patient participation and diverse representation in clinical trials, with the ultimate goal, as discussed earlier, is having equitable access. So when we think about that, by effectively partnering with the community, our business and work has definitely flourished, but most importantly, we have been able to have a much greater impact on the patient that we serve.
Thank you very much. That was very comprehensive as well. I'm going to turn it back now to Ms. Lannery to ask some follow-up questions.
Thank you so much, Angela and Jenny. I think your insights have been very helpful, and thank you so much for those kind words, Angela, on how you've perceived the work of Gansage to date. Thank you. I will go back to our patient organization panelists, and I will start this time with Riyadh. And as you know, one of the Gansage goals is to improve the capacity of patient organizations in order for them to better support people with inherited blood disorders. So in your own view, how well is Gansage performing in this area? And what else should Gansage be doing to be able to better support patient organizations in order for them to support the patients that they care about? Thank you.
Ooh, that's that's a big question, Landry, but let me start. Gansett is a very new organization, and I think in the it's now 2 years that we have started this. It's done quite remarkably well in bringing organizations together from across the globe. We do need to do a lot more work as an international organization to bring more representation from other various diseases, and even here in North America as well. But it's done well by having good educational material that which is a good resource for all the organizations. It's done well in terms of participating and attending a lot of the educational events that happened in some countries and in the UK recently, and you know, by actually being out there and letting the communities know that we are there. And what I mean by communities is the patient communities, the medical community, the industry partners, that this is a new organization that has a different approach to things. And our goal is bringing collective effort. I think Gansett has done great in that. In terms of capacity building, I think a lot of organizations are learning from this. and they are learning from what we're doing. And I'm sure a lot more work will come as we progress further. And now after the second Congress, there will be more organizations joining, so we will have more work to do in terms of training and mentoring. And I think the way it's been structured and the purpose that Gansett is structured, which basically to work at the national and regional levels. It's not just we're looking at the global level and not ignoring the little things that are affecting every region and every country. So that will be the areas that we can help the capacity building for the organizations.
Thank you, Riyadh. And I'll go to Dr. Odeshina, asking the same question. Again, Gansett's goal is to improve the capacity of patient organizations to ensure that they are able to better support people with inherited blood disorders in their own localities and community. How do you think, in your own view, that Gansett could continue to advance this work with patient organizations?
Thank you. I think one common problems with NGOs is staffing and funding to be able to hire and sustain experienced staff. So I think that's one area that Gansett needs to look into, because I know we talk about collecting data, we talk about having all these services, and many CBOs have good intentions of services they want to provide, but they do not have qualified staff, and they do not have enough funds to be able to keep these staff members. So I think CBOs, and I'm speaking from experience, GLOSCA has been funded by donations from family members, church members, friends, and anybody that will listen to us in the past. That's not enough to sustain an organization. So we need to break the wall of whatever is preventing CBOs from getting the type of funding that academics get, academians get, and industry or other companies. So we need to be able to support our CBOs to be able to accomplish their goals. So that's one area that Gansett may need to focus on to be able to support staff members. For instance, GLOSCA was able to identify that for our sickle cell community to increase awareness and to provide genetic counseling, you need trained genetic counselor or trained educators. Many programs require that they pay for registration. So a lot of people who may be interested in attending those trainings may not have these funds to pay for their registration, the internet and books and whatever is required, or hotel or accommodation. Support, financial support for such programs will be helpful. We have established a hybrid model where we provide genetic counseling training and health educator training online for anybody who wants to participate, because we think this is another way of expanding the knowledgeable professionals that will be helping us increasing the awareness and providing accurate information. But funding for such programs is needed. So we need to break the wall and make sure that we increase the capacity by supporting staff and sustaining them. Thank you. I hope that.
Thank you. So I know that for additional, you are not expecting Gansett to provide funding, but what I think you are saying, I get it. What you're saying is to help build your capacity, that you're able to then secure the funding that you need for the programs, and that the CBOs that are patient organizations and members of Gansett need to get their work done. So it's all about capacity building. And thank you so much. I get that. Thank you. I'll pass it to Duran one Grieger.
We'll take it. We'll take it if you provide us.
For sure. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Duran to provide her insight on how Gansett can further support patient organizations that are its
Well,
members.
I like Dr. Odessa's call for funding, because funding is key in terms of being able to do many of these things, certainly if we're looking at professional support services. But I think what we have found, as you know, there are so many, I think Riyad talked about it as well, these smaller patient groups. And patient groups are oftentimes in, not well-resourced environments. One of the, and certainly, access to expert service is important, but let's not forget as well. I just came out of a couple of meetings, one in we're dealing with China and EU, but also just now at the Lancet Commission, where we're looking at rare diseases as a whole. Big issues that's come up over and over again is, what about support, social support? What about support for family? What about support for mental wellness? What about, those things can actually come from the community. And I think, making those more available across the, and I know Gansett does some of that already, as well as the sickle cell community and the inherited bleeding disorders community in Canada does. But those, in fact, are also, I would say, more generic than some of the, site specific, right? So when you talk about things like mental wellness, social well-being, also care for caregivers, that's a huge area that I think we, have not emphasized enough. So I would say one of the things that could be done, and going across not just inherited, bleeding disorders communities, but other communities that are very much in the same situation, where you've got, in some cases, very serious conditions that may need, family support as well. Identify what are things that communities, not only within that community, can do, but you can, as a network, provide that are much more common interests. For instance, we've got an Asia Pacific Alliance on rare disease organizations, and we've identified over the past years, things people are asking for is, in fact, mental wellness, mental support, self-care, respite care. These are the kind of things I think that a network like Gansett could really invest in, and find that there would be tremendous value that I won't say cost nothing, but really do go to the level of the community that can actually contribute that a great deal themselves. So how do you become a source of wellness and a source of social support, within your own community? I'm always impressed in terms of what communities come up with themselves. That, I mean, I'm a psychologist by training, and the things they come up with are so much more useful and impactful, and really are much more supportive than we would if we're thinking about it purely from professional services point of view.
Thank you so much. That is so right on. Thank you, Doreen. And I want to just have to say, you're right, because different regions sometimes also have different needs. And in some of my travels to Southeast Asia, for this community, it's about access to therapists. They're not getting access. And so thank you so much for that. Pinpointing what is needed, in these areas, and helping them to advance those. Thank you so much. I'll go back to Dr. Simpson. Gansett has a mentorship program for healthcare providers. That program seems to take off like very well from when we started. We have seasoned hematologists joining to train up and coming doctors and so on. But how else do you think Gansett could support healthcare providers as we build, an interconnected alliance? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. And I actually wanted to build a bit on what Dr. Wong Rayner had said. And Doreen, I hope I'm saying your last name properly. But one thing that I think Gansett can be very helpful when it comes to making our healthcare providers more effective in providing care is getting a better understanding of the gaps that exist that are beyond clinical gaps. Because in addition to providing, hospital-based or clinic-based therapies, there's so many aspects that are important for the health of an individual that go beyond those medical aspects of care. And so thinking about our context in Ottawa, where I'm based, there are gaps when it comes to psychosocial supports in the community. And, some of those gaps can be addressed by services outside of the hospital that perhaps we're not very well versed in, or perhaps we're not even aware of the needs that our patients have. So if GANSID was somehow able to help us to link directly with the communities we serve to understand those needs, I think that would help healthcare providers to deliver better care. I think that the partnerships that will be formed through GANSID will be really impactful. So, I think the mentorship program is excellent and hopefully will be a way to increase engagement and for up and coming clinicians who could also care for individuals with red cell disorders, but also the partnerships that form between care providers, patient-led advocacy groups, community groups and partners, and pharmaceutical and industry partners, I think will be very impactful as well, so that we can work together to improve care as a whole. And one thing I was also thinking about in hearing about the discussions about how GANSID can help advocacy groups, I think that where GANSID has been very successful, or like groups prior to GANSID, so I'm very aware of SCAGO, for example, the Sickle Cell Awareness Group of Ontario, that's been very impactful, would be even teaching community groups how to advocate in terms of, what strategies have been successful in advocating for certain things, and sharing that knowledge almost as an advocacy toolkit even could be very impactful and helpful for groups to advocate within their own communities and to hopefully be successful in doing that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Simpson. And before I pass it to my co-moderator, I wanted to echo what she said, because I think that, one of the platforms or the purpose actually for, getting GANSID started was around advocacy. We noted that many of the patient organizations, those who found them, have good intentions, like Dr. Odeshina said earlier, but we also noticed that many do not have the necessary skill set, that they need to really drive meaningful changes and advocate with governments and stuff like that. And that's one of the things that we're very focused on. So we have developed an 8-module online course for patient organizations to improve their skill sets and all of that in advocacy and other leadership areas. And in 2025, we are planning to start to not only just have those amazing topics that will help these patient organizations as a online module course, but also to start to do them in workshops, so people can be empowered and they can access this advocacy modules in real time. So thank you so much for bringing that up. I think we are all thinking along the same line. Now I'll pass it to Chloe, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landry. So we've heard a lot of interesting perspectives from the patient organizations as well as the healthcare providers about the current gaps, but also highlighting lots of excellent opportunities upcoming. Now we want to turn it to our industry panelists. Maybe we'll start with Janie this time and then go to Angela. Janie, are there any initiatives that you are currently working on or in support of for inherited blood disorders communities that you are currently optimistic about?
Sure. So one of the things that we're currently working on is, as I heard everyone talk about the cross collaboration and across disease states, as what we found is we're working on something called the red cell revolution. And with that idea is we've brought together this multidimensional aspects to understand quality of care as well as the medicine that we provide. And as such, we strive to participate in programs that support all patients. So as an example with the Red Cell Revolution, in 2023, we launched it. And it came out of a meeting, a workshop that we had with members from sickle cell disease, thalassemia, as well as pyruvate kinase deficiency, which included patient advocates, and clinician. And it's over 20 individuals who are part of this multi-stakeholder advocacy advisory council. And what they bring together is different genders, ages, socioeconomic background, and from these 3 different communities. So together, what this group has done is, number one, their goals is around generating published evidence and meaningful solutions that are relevant across all disease areas. The other one is creating a platform to raise awareness about the needs and experience of people touched by these diseases. And recently, what the Red Cell Revolution is working on is they've identified the stressors that impact quality of life and that they're impacted by fatigue, particularly. And while healthcare professionals were aware of it, hearing the discussion and all of everyone being around that same table, they really were able to understand more of the impact directly of anemia. And that's where this insight came up. And otherwise, we may not have uncovered it. And as a result, this group is now initiating a qualitative, first of its kind research looking at not only physical fatigue, but also emotional fatigue and how it's experienced for patients, and uncovering those input and putting programming in place to help address it. And again, it's looking at thalassemia, sickle cell disease, and pyruvate kinase deficiency. So to me, what we are looking at is really having that equitable access, and quality of care and information that comes together from partnering together. And how do we bring all the stakeholders together around the same table to really look at solutions and putting that information together for whether it's medicine that ultimately leads to better medicine and care for our patients and patient outcome as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very exciting initiative. Sounds very innovative and also prioritizing that patient-centric focus. And then Angela?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks so much. And from a Roche perspective, I mean, we're really thinking about how we make decisions in terms of investment decisions. We are not starting at a disease area, but really thinking about it from a DTA perspective, from a therapeutic perspective. Where are the synergies? How can we work together across the therapeutic areas to drive value for the patient community? Are there tools that serve beyond a disease area? And then bringing that thinking through and making sure we're partnering with the right patient community, patient advocates within the patient community, to really shape strategic decision making. You know, where are we setting our research priorities? How are we making those strategic decisions in terms of which medicines we invest in, driving towards where the highest unmet need is and bringing the most meaningful therapeutics to market. And then even beyond, as you move along the product life cycle, I mean, we do quite a bit of work from a clinical trials perspective, but as that molecule moves along the product life cycle, we really are looking to partner with the patient community at a DTA level, but also at a DA level to support projects that really enable shared decision making, education, the development of patient materials, but also health ecosystem shaping. I work at a global level, but ultimately drugs, medicines are approved and funded at a local level. So how are we ensuring that we're working with our affiliate partners to make sure that there's a pull through of medicines that are important to the patient community, but also bringing that DTA perspective as well in terms of making sure that they're investing and bringing as many medicines to patients. So we're really looking at it both from a therapeutic area, how we can shape from a therapeutic area, but also bringing in the disease area perspective as well.
Thank you very much, Angela. That was very helpful. We have some comments in the chat box, but folks, if you have any questions for our panelists, you can put it in the chat or you can raise your hand. We will call you. Abdul Jabal Aminun said, collaboration is really the key. We can achieve a lot together. Sickle Cell and World said there's no way to advance global hemoglobinopathy cause without cross-disease advocacy and collaboration. So these are very great points, and thank you so much for providing this point. Turning to our panelists, I'm going to ask you to provide in 1 to 2 minutes each if there's any other advice that you have for the inherited blood disorders community or GANSI. So I will start with Jenny. Thank you.
Had muted myself. I think what's been shown here today is you guys have really struck in on the collaboration. I think that's really at the foundation of who Gansett is, and continuing to do that and unlocking sort of the full collective potential of the different areas that are being served. And so as you look at working collaboratively and having all of the folks at the table, whether that's healthcare professional, advocates, patients, caregivers, policymakers, that we touched on a little bit here as well, and as well as pharmaceutical companies. As we all come to the table, we bring very unique perspectives and insights. And I think, as demonstrated by this panel today, as you guys continue to do that, that really will ultimately be very impactful for all the communities that you're looking at serving, that we all are doing as well. And as we as industry look at finding solutions to drive drug development forward and put medicines in patients' hands, those who are living with rare diseases, we look for those partnerships and collaborations. So I'm excited to not only be here today, but also to continue the work after today and beyond.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's great. And Dr. Simpson?
What can I say in closing? I have to say, like, this has been a great discussion, and I guess also reinforcing what Janie has just said in terms of, the importance of this sharing of ideas across different partnerships to advance the care for individuals of those with inherited blood disorders. Can't be emphasized enough. Like, I think that we need to continue these conversations, and for those who are patients, those who are providers in terms of caregivers or healthcare providers or partners from pharma, when it comes to caring for individuals with these conditions, we don't know what's possible unless we ask the questions, right? So we shouldn't shy away from that, and we should keep trying to drive our cause forward and to really provide equitable care across all the disease groups where we can. So I really look forward to the work that Gansett will continue to do.
Thank you so much. Dr. Victoria Odesina.
Yes, I'm excited that the collaboration has started. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we're on a good path. I just want us to continue to remember that health-related quality of life focuses on the impact of the health on a person's well-being and their family members, who are often the caregivers. So whatever we do, we should always remember that. And there are challenges to that, which include, as we've mentioned, funding, infrastructure, sustainability, stigma, and uncertainty. So if we put that at the forefront, it will guide everything that we do, recognizing that individuals living with this condition and their family members are looking forward to having access at all levels of care and their community, and looking forward to improve quality of life. So whatever we do, the patient and the family is the focus. And we need to continue to work at achieving those goals. So those are my parting words.
Thank you. Duran?
First of all, I want to give huge congratulations to Gansett for the progress that has been made, for the concrete progress, for the programs you put together, certainly for this forum, but also Landry for your leadership in this from the beginning to now. Leadership counts for a lot. And I think, this was an inordinate task that you put upon yourself. And obviously, you have a lot of help. You've got a lot of support. You've brought together the community. So you've got the stakeholders. But at the end of the day, there still needs to be that leadership. So, I mean, kudos to you and kind of where Gansett is now. I'm going to say something a little bit different for the moment, if you don't mind. Some of the groups I'm involved in now, we're doing the World Health Organization, trying to get a resolution on rare diseases. I belong to a World Economic Forum on equity in rare diseases and another global commission on equity beyond rare diseases, equity in health services. I can think of no community, and certainly Gansett as the lead to that, to actually call for equity in ways that touch all the points, right? Rare diseases, we are actually making a point around equity because even with universal health coverage, if you have a rare disease, it's very easy to be lost in there. So, recognizing in terms of leaving no one behind, people that have rare conditions, ultra rare conditions, etc. We also, I think, as Dr. Odesna has said, we also have huge risk in terms of people that are already marginalized, whether they're people of color, people of lower income, people that live in geographic regions in which they do not have the kind of political support. And again, when we talk about universal equity, if we're not directly addressing that in health, then we're not doing it. And I think we need to kind of use the people that are involved and the organizations like Gansett to really make that push. You can't talk about equity without us. And I think this is really where it becomes so totally important. I think the third thing I would put in there, because you've got such strong patient representation, right? It has to come from the people and the people that are directly affected. Again, what Dr. Sanders was saying about patients and families as well. So again, I'm hearing equity all over the place. And I would say for the most part, I don't think there's really an understanding of what equity means. I think it's too easy sometimes to go for, okay, how do we just kind of look at people of color, or how do we include people that may be somewhat a little bit remote? I think there's no better group, I think, that really can take a forefront in terms of helping us really, demand equity. Stigma is another message Dr. Odesina talked about. I mean, you can't get equity if you feel like you don't have a voice, and you feel like you don't have a right to be at the table. Again, this is something that you can do. So I applaud what you're doing, and I look forward to, helping elevate, what Gansett is doing, and to make sure that the communities that you're representing are there to actually have a full voice as we move forward in terms of equity.
Thank you, Duran. Well said. And lastly, but not the least, Riyadh Gilbert.
Yes, Landry. I mean, well said, Durhan, and thank you very much. I just want to leave today with a couple takeaways, and one of them is what Durhan touched on earlier. And I think that's an area of gap that maybe we have overlooked at Gansett, or maybe we get too busy focusing on advocacy and education and the mentorship programs, which we should advertise. I think not everybody knows a lot about them. We need to work more on that and find ways how people can access them easier. Is that we need to work, maybe do something for the wellness and the support for patients and the care for carers or for care providers. I think we haven't really touched on that, and that's very important. That's something we missed, and thanks for Durhan for bringing this up today, highlighting it, and Dr. Victoria as well, she's mentioned it. The other thing is, I like the red cell revolution that was mentioned from Agios, and I think that is good because it's a reminder that industry partners are not only our partners for when we need them, but there are many other resources that they provide, or maybe that we can work on with them, or even try and use it, or see what fits for our needs best. I think these are the areas we need to work on. But overall, I mean, Gansett have been doing great. I think I'm very happy with the progress that's been made, as Durhan was saying. It's still very early in the journey. And I'm hoping we will do an in-person meeting next year. I know I've been bugging you about this. I just I want that because the networking that happens in those in-person meetings is huge, and I think there's a need for that.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Well
Before
said.
you go to the closing poll, I know you're trying to do it. You got a couple minutes. I just noticed that Shelley Clark has had her hand up patiently since almost the
Oh,
beginning. Can we give her a
I didn't
minute or
realize
so?
that.
Yeah, I just noticed that. I mean,
Thank
I had
you.
noticed it all along.
Thank you. Before we go to her, Angela, did I miss you? Did you see your closing words?
I did not.
Oh, I'm so
But
sorry. We'll let you say, and then we go to Shirley.
yeah, no, and I think I echo the sentiments of what I've heard, right? I think, what I really appreciate about Gansett is the fact that you're bringing that diverse voice to the table. You're bringing all the partners to the table, really creating a collaborative environment to help move the needle forward. And it reminds me of something that I heard at a conference around sickle cell disease, that in order to move the needle, it's not just one stakeholder's responsibility, but everyone's responsibility, and to come to the table with a collaborative mindset and a partnership. And I think that that's the environment that you've created, Lenry, is that open environment for everyone to work together. I would say that there's lots we can do, right? We can boil the ocean. And I think there was a lot of ideas that came out on the came out in this talk, and having focus and starting to maybe address one piece at a time, so we're moving the needle forward. But I think you have the right recipe here in order to be able to do that. So I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for those words. Shirley Clark, my apologies. If you would like to speak at this point, we will, be happy to listen to you.
Shelley mentioned she might have been virtually stretching, so maybe later on we can all do yoga. But I think that might have been a
Okay.
mistake. Or if Shelley would like to say anything.
Okay, that's fine. In the meantime, please, the poll is on. You can continue to also, please provide your input to the poll. We like to use the result of this poll to help us guide how this session has been. Is it something you like to see next year? And how our panelists and also we that we're moderating, how it's been. So thank you so much. If you can continue to do the poll while Shelley, if you want to say a few words, the floor is yours. Otherwise, we want to thank you. And I'll pass it on to Chloe.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Lenry, and really very inspirational hearing all of our panelists speak today. And it's an excellent segue to say now is the time to build capacity, and that everyone here has the opportunity to do that because we have a workshop coming up next, starting at 2:30 p.m. EST, so in about 12 minutes. The session link is in the link that I have provided in the chat. For those that maybe are in a time zone where it's about to go, it's like bedtime soon, you can join us tomorrow at 5:30 a.m. EST. It's a different Zoom link, so please do refer to the agenda to make sure you're in the right place at the right time. But again, this is the opportunity to practice what we preach and all build capacity together.
Thank you very much. And on this note, we thank you again for being a part of the Industry Alliance Symposium. And we look forward to see you on our next session or tomorrow morning. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your day or night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. All right.